A rotting building is a forgotten pocket of time, waiting for a flashlight beam to cut through the dust. Take the Cold War-era military village in our first story. This sprawling installation once housed over 200 families, completely cut off from the rest of civilization. Locals traded rumors about demonic cults and deep underground experiments. But for a group of high schoolers sneaking in, the draw was strictly the earthly thrill of the dare. That same morbid curiosity applies to smaller, isolated ruins too. A collapsing farmhouse miles away from any road, or the aggressively silent home of a recently deceased neighbor. People who break into these spaces rarely expect a ghost. They go to sift through the tangible remnants of lives that were abruptly left behind. The fears they carry inside are entirely practical. They worry about plunging through rotting floorboards, breathing in hazardous waste, or simply being arrested for trespassing. Getting in requires crossing a very real physical line. You have to cut the headlights on a dirt road, step out of the car, and manually heave open an imposing military checkpoint gate. This is the threshold, the exact moment an explorer pushes past physical barriers and unknowingly enters a space where the normal rules of reality begin to degrade. Crossing it triggers a visceral sensory shock. In the case of the dead neighbor's house, the threshold was defined by a heavy, unmistakable smell of death radiating from the kitchen. Because these trespassers wrap themselves in earthly logic to feel safe, they are left completely stripped of defenses when the environment stops obeying physical laws. The initial warning sign is never an aberration. It starts as a subtle environmental shift, a sudden realization that a decaying structure is responding like an occupied habitat. Inside the abandoned military barracks, the absolute silence was broken by the rhythmic creaking of footsteps on wood. When one of the teens called out into the dark, the footsteps deliberately stopped. In the isolated farmhouse, the shift came through bizarre, displaced objects. Hidden in a crawlspace were stacks of decades-old, rodent-chewed baby food, covered in thick cobwebs. And in the deceased neighbor's home, the warning was violently aggressive. A massive, heavy bang slammed against the wall from an adjacent, completely empty room. Faced with these anomalies, the human brain scrambles to map them to rational causes. Explorers quickly blame settling foundations, raccoons in the walls, or sudden drafts of wind. Attributing highly responsive, localized sounds to the wind is a reflex. It is the mind's final, desperate attempt to reject a terrifying alternative. Then the reality breaks entirely. Fleeing the military village, the teens sprinted to their car, only to find a tall woman in a filthy black dress with one leg already inside their back seat. On the upper level of the ruined farmhouse, a structure literally missing half of its ground floor, an old wrinkled woman sat calmly in a rocking chair, humming a melody in the pitch black. And hours after breaking into the dead neighbor's house, two friends watched the dark silhouette of a man pacing slowly from the bedroom doorway to the window. This diagram outlines the direct line of sight from the narrator's bedroom across to the dead neighbor's window. From this exact vantage point, the shifting shadow couldn't be cast by a passing car or a streetlight. It had to be an independent moving entity. These manifestations directly contradict the basic requirements of physical survival. You cannot safely squat in a collapsing ruin, and you do not calmly hum to yourself in the freezing dark. The explorers had to either drop their logic entirely or run. Once the adrenaline burns off and the explorers are safe at home, the psychological defense mechanisms kick in. The brain violently attempts to reassert logic. They immediately invent desperate alibis. They tell themselves the woman by the car was a homeless person seeking shelter, and the pacing shadow was simply the dead neighbor's estranged son cleaning out the property. Let's compare squatters' survival needs against the evidence. Squatters require heat, security, and stealth. Yet these encounters involved fully exposed figures aggressively engaging running vehicles. As for the neighbor's son, the timeline fails. He didn't arrive to gut the house until a year later. The mind would rather invent a dangerous, improbable real-world threat than accept a truth it cannot explain. We choose the fear we understand over the reality we don't. Years later, all three of these stories end with the exact same chilling detail. The military village, the rotting farmhouse, and the deceased neighbor's home were all eventually demolished and wiped from the map. This erasure takes a heavy psychological toll. Without the physical foundations, the dust, or the geometry of the hallways, there is no way to return to the scene. The encounters can never be investigated or proven. When the physical evidence is bulldozed into the earth, having a terrified friend standing next to you in the dark becomes your only remaining tether to sanity. The real lingering dread comes from the silence that follows. You are left alone with a memory of a place that no longer exists, forced to choose between a